Finding a nice tall seated position, take your feet to the front and then kind of move the fleshy parts of your glutes out of the way so you can feel your sit bones rooted into the mat. We want to have a little bit of space here through the back of the knees and the front of the hips. So we don't want to be all the way crunched up here. That might cause our spine to round a little bit. So just allow yourself some space where you can feel rooted in your tailbone, in your hips, but your knees are still bent. We'll take the arms out in front. And I want you to think about kind of sinking back into our lumbar spine, energy reaching out through our arms forward. So there's energetically a forward motion with the upper body, but then lower body is scooping back. We'll push into our heels, nod our chin to our chest, and then roll to a seated position and stack at the top. Now you might be wondering, why are we pushing into our heels? So when you push into your heels in this position, you help to deactivate the front of our hips, which are super active during ab work. So you're effectively activating your hamstrings, your backside, your posterior chain, and that helps your hip flexors take a little break and settle in so that your abs can take over on the front side. Let's do 3 more. We'll exhale down, inhale, pause, exhale, roll, stack at the top. As always, you'll probably hear me say this a million times. Don't be afraid of an audible breath. Let it out. Sound is vibration. It also just helps you sort of coordinate the movement with the breath when you can actually hear it. Let's start to go all the way down. Again, pushing into your heels as you come down. We'll reach the arms overhead. Take an inhale to lift your head and chest. Now from here, I want you to think about pushing down into your tailbone and into your low back to come up. Nice and slow, bend the knees, stack the spine again. We'll take the thumbs back behind us on these. So push into your heels, pressing into the mat so that your hips don't shift. Come all the way down. Inhale, lift the head and chest. Push into your tailbone and roll all the way back up. Now, I tend to be lordotic, which means my pelvis is tilted slightly forward, which makes roll-ups pretty difficult. Even though I've been teaching for almost 10 years now, it's still challenging for me to kind of get over that empty space. So a little trick you can use is to actually roll up a towel and fill in that space behind your lumbar spine. That way you have something to push against and you're gonna feel your abs almost immediately. I don't have a towel today, but I would love to have had one so that I'm not using more momentum than I am using abdominals. And that's really just anatomical. It is not a reflection of your strength or your connection to your abdominals. Everybody's body is different, everybody's anatomy is different. So just know that when you add props or modifications, it doesn't always mean that you're doing something wrong or that you don't have that strength. Let's do 1 more. Inhale to lift. Exhale to roll all the way up. All right, let's come all the way down onto our backs. You can just guide yourself down with your arms and find a nice comfortable position where your hips feel even across from each other and your belly button's facing up to the ceiling. Your hip bones are shining up as well. We're gonna float our right leg to tabletop, left leg to tabletop, and then interlace your fingers. You're creating a basket. And then hook your thumbs at the base of your skull at that occipital ridge, and then lift the head and chest. You always wanna try and come up 1 leg at a time so you're not putting any strain on your low back lumbar spine. So once we're in position, I want you to see if you can lift your shoulder blades, like the bottom tips of your shoulder blades, off the mat. If that doesn't feel available today, that's okay. That's a goal to sort of strive for. So we're gonna inhale, tap our right leg, and then exhale, lift the head and chest. Just the right side for now. And we're really thinking about trying to move the leg in isolation of anything else. So upper body staying nice and stable, head is heavy in your hands, and then your pelvis is nice and heavy, pushing down into your tailbone. What we don't want to happen is sort of that arching as we move the leg back and forth. And the reason for that is you end up using hip flexors and low back to make the movement happen versus that deep abdominal connection, that stability from your core, from your center. Good, let's try it on the other side. Inhale down, exhale lift. Now a little trick here, if you tend to get into your hip flexors on leg lifted ab work, is just to kind of keep that other leg down, rooted, and just work with the moving leg. then you can really start to imagine that instead of lifting the leg from your hip flexors, you're lifting it from your abdominals. And sometimes that just takes a little bit of a mental shift. So you're like, okay, this is not where I'm moving from. Brain, send that engagement into my abdominals, and that really helps the hip flexors relax. We'll do 2 more. Inhaling into the ribs, exhaling out from the belly, and then we'll keep both legs lifted. Let's take our lever a little bit longer now. So we're gonna reach out through the right leg, exhale, pull back in. Inhale to reach, bring it back in. Now some more options in this position. Remember, this is the cued exercise, but it's not for everybody. It might not be for you today, and it'll be for you next week, so just be gentle with yourself. One modification, again, is just to keep that other leg down as we move through the joint. The other is to take the leg a little bit higher. So instead of taking it all the way down, just hovering over the mat, you can take it a little bit higher to reduce that sort of pull on the pelvis and the low back until you feel like your abs are at a place where they can support the leg without tilting. And again, it's never like we have to get to that place. If this is where you end up, you're still working your abs, you're still doing what works for your body. So it's not necessarily something that you have to achieve is to get your leg all the way down. Let's try this on the other side. So we're gonna inhale that left leg and exhale, pull back. And then in this position, even though I call out a heavy head, so heavy in the hands, it doesn't mean tilting your head back or exposing your throat space. It does mean that your head is sort of resting in your hands, but your gaze is still forward, your chin is still dropped, and then we're still maintaining that forward flexion of the spine with that parallel pelvis or that neutral pelvis. Let's start to alternate. We'll reach out and out. So this one is a little bit more challenging to do if you had one of your feet down. So you'd want to place that foot down before you reach the other leg. That way you're not switching mid-air because that will just cause more pulling on the low back. Otherwise, both legs are lifted, inhale, reach, and bring it back. And then ideally you're bringing the knees in so they're just over your hips. But again, depending on your anatomy, you might want to have your knees a little bit closer to your chest so you have a little more support for your abdominals, a little more support for your lumbar spine. Good, let's bring them back in. Let's give it a little adjust, lift a little higher. We're gonna reach that right leg out to straight as we extend our left arm behind us. Lift both up to the ceiling and then lower back down. Again, here, use your mods if you need them. You can take the left leg to the floor. This is creating sort of that engagement through both sides now, creating some sort of imbalance so that you have to work on both sides to keep centered. Reach. Good. Let's bring it back. Hopefully my deep breathing is not getting to you. Hopefully you can sort of mimic that breath with me. I know I used to be a fan of not hearing other people's breath, but when you start to sort of sync up with someone else's breath, it can actually be a really beautiful way to connect to yourself and to others, and that sense of coordination between what your breath is doing and how it's making the movement happen. All right, let's lower the head and chest, pull the knees in, rock side to side. Just a few more here. Let's grab behind our thigh bones and just run your hands up your hamstrings so you're reactivating through the backside with touch. Adjust your spine just so that we're in a neutral position, and then return those hands back behind your head. This time we're gonna go for both legs. So this is challenging. We're gonna reach out, double leg stretch, exhale, pull the knees in this time past your hips. Now I know the classical instructors are gonna come after me for this, for bringing the knees past the hips, but here's my reasoning. There's a lot of weight as we bring both legs forward, and it's nice to find that sort of pendulation between challenge and then relief. You can do a few where you just bring them right over your hips. You're gonna feel that change, that challenge. But if you're someone who tends to get into their hip flexors or into their low back, it's just more approachable to allow yourself a little bit of rest before you take the legs back out. There's always options. Same movement now, let's reach to a V. Exhale, pull back in. Inhale to reach, exhale to pull. Thinking of squeezing inner thighs together as the knees come in, and then keeping your knees and your top of your feet facing the ceiling as we move. And I can turn to the side a little bit here so you can see what that looks like from a different angle. We're spreading the legs, keeping our top of our feet facing up and our heels facing down. 3 more. And the other thing about bringing the knees back in is you just have a little more longevity. You might only be able to do about, let's come down, only about 3 or 4 if you're just bringing the knees in, but you can actually get more into a flow if you allow yourself that pendulation between the rest and the tension. Let's cross at our ankles, roll up. We're almost there. We'll come to an all-fours position, and before we move on, let's just do a little cat-cow. We'll nod our chin to our chest, lift our back ribs to the ceiling, pushing into the heels of our palms, and let's just sink heavy, softening elbows, softening hips, take our gaze forward. Exhale, tuck under, nod chin to chest, lift back ribs, find that space in between the shoulder blades, and then a soft elbow, rock forward, and then take the gaze forward. I like to involve arms in my cat-cow. It feels a little more flowy. It feels like I'm really taking energy from crown out through tailbone and then back through again. And it also adds a little element of arms. You get that little tricep press if you're thinking about really hugging your elbows in. And you'd be surprised how tricep drops from here are actually a super powerful way to work your triceps. We'll do that in another video where you're actually working extensors, you're working your lats, and then you're working the back of your arms without having to do an actual push-up. Okay, so let's get back to the abs, heels of your palms under. We're just gonna tuck our toes under and then lift our knees off. Feel your center engage and then reconnect to the floor fully so you find a rest position. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lower, find rest. Now, as we're doing this, we are thinking about those spinal extensors, so keeping our spine nice and long. We're also thinking about keeping a little bend in our elbows so that all the pressure, all the weight is not in our joints, but it's actually in the muscles of the upper arm. Exhale to lift, inhale to lower. Now, on our next 5, we're gonna stay lifted. So it's just gonna be a little drop and a little lift. Pushing the air out from your belly, bringing it into your ribs. Last one. And then we're gonna stay in this position. Let's extend our right leg behind us, bring it back in, and then extend the left. This might feel a little funny at first, and if it's not available, you can just continue those lifts that we were doing where you find rest at the bottom. Let's do about 2 more each side, checking in that our shoulders aren't coming up toward our ears, that we have a soft elbow, a long spine, and a deep breath. Let's bring it back down, widen the knees, sit back. Little arm workout there too. Let's shift our hips side to side, getting all those little kinks out if we had them. And then our final move for today, we are gonna swing our legs around and we're gonna do some knee pulls. So we're gonna come all the way back to the start where we were doing those roll downs, but instead of coming up with our legs on the floor, we're gonna come up with one leg and then both. So let's come all the way down, reach the arms overhead, push into your left heel, and then exhale, lift, and draw that right knee in. Inhale, reach it down, bring the arms overhead. Exhale. A deep exhale, pushing out from your belly, bringing the air into your ribs. That's your lateral breath, that's your Pilates breath. 3 more. Really allowing yourself to make the movement happen from the breath, from that coordinated sort of exhale, that exertion using the breath. Good, let's take it to the other side. Inhale, lift. Exhale, push heavy into the tailbone, draw the knee in with a deep exhale. Actively pressing the right heel down into the mat. And if these are not available for you, you can also stay seated and just work on lifting the leg in without coming all the way down. One more. All right, final move for today. Both knees are coming in. You can stick to alternating if this feels like too much. Inhale, lift the head and chest. Exhale, pull the knees in. Extend out, reach the arms. Let's take the arms overhead. We'll inhale, exhale, both knees come in. Inhale to reach, take the legs down first before the spine. Now this is an advanced move. If this is not available today or ever, stick with the single leg or that seated position where you're tapping. Let's do 4 more. I like to think of energy reaching out through my hands forward. I don't know if it's mental or it's actual, but it really helps me to have a little more power in my lift and a little more control. When I have the upper body active, then the lower body wants to be more active too. Let's come up to this position and we'll hold. You can kind of give yourself a little adjustment, maybe take the fleshy parts out. And we're just gonna hold this position with a tucked tailbone, palms facing up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bring it down, widen the knees, forward fold. Let's just take a little shift side to side. We'll come to a cross-leg position. Let's stretch our side body, reach the arm overhead. Take it to the other side. Let's start to draw little circles. Just giving your center a little massage. Beautiful. Let's come back to an all fours position. We'll do one more of that cat-cow, nodding chin to chest. Softening. This also is a little stretch for your abdominals. When you tilt your pelvis forward and take your chest up, you're expanding through that space. Beautiful. One more. Awesome. So that is your quick ab series. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see in our next mini series, our little Pilates stack, and I'll see you next time.